I chose for this video essay is The Jewish Maiden by Hans Christian Andersen, written in 1856. This story really stood out to me. First, because it's a story with the word Jewish in the title written by someone with Christian in his name. And also, I'm Jewish. I teach Hebrew school and have grown up in my temple, and my religion is important to me. So I wanted to hear what Andersen had to say about Judaism. So this fairy tale isn't very popular at all. Because of this, I couldn't find any illustrations of the story beyond buying the book itself. So these illustrations are all from a Scandinavian edition of the book, and the artist's name is Museo Cosimo. Before we delve into the question at hand, I'll go over a summary since it's not super well known. The story follows a Jewish girl named Sarah. In the beginning, she was living with her father, and we find out that her mother had passed. On her mother's deathbed, she had told Sarah that she must remain Jewish throughout her life and not be baptized. Nevertheless, Sarah attended a Christian school after her mother's death, although she was not to participate in any classes teaching the Bible. Instead, Sarah was supposed to be doing other homework while still staying in the classroom, but she loved listening to the priest so much and was far more engaged than any of her classmates. At this point, it was very clear that Sarah no longer wanted to be Jewish and would rather be a Christian, but she still wanted to honor her mother's wishes, so she remained unbaptized. Next, we see a poor grown-up Sarah working as a household servant in Denmark. Here again, we see Sarah longing to become a Christian. She mentions that in the Jewish faith, the Sabbath is at a different time than in Christianity, meaning that if she observed Judaism, she wouldn't be working from Friday night to Saturday night every week. She then said, however, quote, "But what meaning do days and hours have for God?" unquote, and decides to change her Sabbath from the Jewish day to the Christian day, one of her more obvious steps in mentally converting to Christianity. The next scene was of Sarah's master reading a book aloud. Although he was not technically reading from the Gospel, the book was still about Christianity. The reader hears the story for themselves. It's basically about a man who is torturing a Christian, and the Christian escapes. Later, the Christian captured the man who has been torturing him and had the opportunity to hurt him, but doesn't. The Christian talked about how Christ is forgiving and that God is love. Then, after hearing what he had to say, the torturer also decides to become a Christian. After hearing this story, Sarah wanted to become a Christian more than ever. But she remembered the importance of honoring thy father and thy mother and repressed those feelings. A few years passed and her master died, and Sarah ended up caring for the now sick widow. She'd been frequently reading the Bible to her, and one night, Andersen wrote that she felt a new light clear her soul and felt her heart whisper, saying that she must not be baptized because of her mother. Her heart also whispered, however, that though she would not be baptized on earth, she would meet God after death and he would know that she believed in Jesus Christ. In the following scene, Sarah died, and in those moments before, the story said, quote, "She trembled as she said his holy name, and a baptism of fire washed over her more powerfully than her body could bear. She sank down fainting, weaker than even the sick widow she was watching over." End quote. On the final page, we learn that Sarah is buried in a grave right next to a Christian cemetery near a church. This way, she could still be technically honoring her mother's wishes on earth, but the light of God that shone on the Christian cemetery would shine on her too. Now that we're in the discussion section, the question I want to delve into is the obvious one. Is the Jewish Maiden anti-Semitic? But before we get into that, let me rewind a little and take a look at how Jewish people were viewed in the 19th century in Denmark, where Hans Christian Andersen lived. In 1813, according to the book Anti-Semitism in the North, quote, "the legal status of Jewish minority changed and was a topic of intense debate," unquote. This was the impetus for what happened in 1819, when people in Copenhagen were attacking and sometimes killing Jewish people. The first half of the 19th century was known as the Danish Golden Age, in which many non-Jewish authors, like Hans Christian Andersen, had Jewish characters as their protagonists. Although the authors referred to their characters as noble Jews, The Jewish characters were often, like in the Jewish Maiden, written as though they must be assimilated to Christianity. Now let's get back to the Jewish Maiden and the main question. Is the Jewish Maiden anti-Semitic? And my answer is yes, definitely yes. I say this because although the story is not outwardly anti Semitic and does not say that Jews are bad or stereotype them, there are still undeniable anti Semitic tones. So let's think back to the beginning, when Sarah is in the Christian school and is in Bible class, clearly very engaged in the material. Within this first scene alone, we learn that Sarah longs to become a Christian. If, like in most fairy tales, she had to go on a quest, becoming a Christian and being baptized would be that quest. And, as all fairy tale readers know, every good quest has an antagonist, something making it more difficult to reach the goal. So, what's holding Sarah back in this story? Judaism. We know this because the only thing keeping Sarah from fully participating in her Bible classes, and keeping her from turning into a Christian, and keeping her from becoming baptized is her mother's wish for her to stay Jewish. Throughout the book, we hear about the beauties of Christianity and how it is a wonderful religion. We hear again and again how much Sarah longs to become a Christian. But she says again and again that she has sworn to God that she would honor her mother and not become baptized. Hans Christian Andersen likely puts this in because he wants to show how good of a Christian she would be in honoring thy father and thy mother, even though that's obviously a big part of Judaism. It's the Ten Commandments, which are in both Judaism and Christianity. So this leads me to my next question. How is Judaism integrated into the story? My answer is, it's not. The only mention of Judaism is that the protagonist was born Jewish. Anderson speaks nothing of the Jewish faith itself. The only way he integrates Judaism in the story is through a label. All Judaism meant to him was an adjective. The only time he even uses the word Jewish is when he's referring to the maiden. It's really no different than calling her a red-headed maiden. It's the same thing. Which brings me to my final point. Is Christianity viewed as superior to Judaism in this story? Without a doubt. As I mentioned, the word Jewish in the story is only used as a label, and the religion itself is never spoken about. With Christianity, however, it's the complete opposite. Throughout all of the Jewish Maiden, we hear about good Christians and good Christian beliefs, and we even hear a story about how great Christianity is. It's like one is viewed, Judaism, as simply an adjective, while the other, Christianity, is viewed as an actual religion, thereby showing Anderson's belief that Christianity is indeed the superior religion. So, in conclusion, although the story is not outwardly anti Semitic and does not say that Jews are bad or stereotype them, in The Jewish Maiden, Judaism is the antagonist, used only as a label and is viewed as an inferior religion. I think this story should remain one of his less popular ones for kids because it is extremely problematic and can make kids more judgmental of other religions. On the other hand, it is literature that shows how people view Jewish people, and that's important to history. So, in a high school or college level, it might be more appropriate, but it should only be kept to people who are older because kids aren't going to have the same viewpoint on this story. Thank you.